Hello, everybody. What is up? How's it going? Hope you're doing well out there. Let's make sure everything's running well in these crazy suppressed times. We're going to talk about today. Today, we're going to talk about, so, as opposed to other days. I made it sound like, which day is he going to talk? Today, we're going to talk about um, Trump's rampage against the left. They're using the killing of Charlie Kirk to go after this radical, this imaginary, well-connected, well-funded, all working together in just an amazing way, quote unquote radical left. Of course, essentially none of that exists. It's just they're going to use this to crush free speech, or the remnants of free speech. They're going to use it to crush those of us who speak out. I don't know, for certain things like Palestine. What? No. So yeah, they're going to use it for all these things. It's called, and I don't know what might come out about the shooting of Charlie Kirk in the future, but as of right now, I would just call it shock doctrine. They know some shit's going to go down. When was the last time years went by in America without some crazy shit going down? Okay, they know it's going to happen. They just wait for it to happen, and then they use it to rip away all of your rights and any remnants of rights. I mean, they've already ripped a lot of them away. But we're seeing this right now. We're also going to get into Israel. The UN put out a report calling it genocides. And again, this is one of these things where you and I go, we knew it was genocide, but still important to have these reports and things like that. Trump's efforts going in front of the Supreme Court to take full control of the economy, which a lot of the economics, the control of the economy is supposed to be in the hands of other groups and institutions, such as Congress, such as the Federal Reserve, et cetera. I mean, in our system, I don't mean supposed to be in my view. I don't think the Federal Reserve is a bunch of billionaires sitting there around circle jerking each other. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, Federal Reserve is wonderful and perfect, and you need to treat them right. But still, I don't know if we're really excited to have Trump more in control of the economy. But anyway, let's start off. Click thumbs up, click subscribe, click all that good stuff. We are crazy suppressed. The suppression has actually ramped up in the past few days, past couple weeks, which you kind of think, how could it get any worse? Oh, there are ways. They can keep making it worse. Anyway, this is from Alternet, which I barely even knew existed anymore. But pathological liar, experts calling Vance dangerous. His remarks will incite further violence. But this is about, the article in general is about Trump's efforts to make Charlie Kirk's killing about this massive movement on the radical left. Because obviously the shooter, Tyler Robinson, was a radical left, even though we've seen no evidence of that whatsoever. The only evidence we've seen as to his motives are that he disliked Charlie Kirk's hatred, which, what if that says, giant radical left movement? And by the way, we're also going to get into, in a few minutes, the ideology of shooters in general in this country. But anyway, two senior officials in President Donald Trump's administration, whose names were not revealed, told the New York Times that the government is planning a major crackdown on left-wing groups, nonprofits, and individuals whom it alleges fund or incite political violence. Now, I'm just going to take a guess as to what some of those groups would be. There's not a lot of money on the actual left. There's money in liberal circles, but as we know, if you actually look at our government, liberal does not mean left. But they will use this to go after groups such as Code Pink. I'm going to play a clip in a minute where Trump's speaking about how much he despises Code Pink. Code Pink, one of the only groups that is regularly in the halls of Congress calling Congress genocidal maniacs and holding up bloody hands. I don't think it's real blood. I've talked to Medea about that. They usually use red paint. I'm like, Medea, you got to get some real human blood on those hands, okay? If you're going to hold up hands to the Congress, because we can tell that's red paint. And if you listen, you got to make it legit, okay? I'm not going to talk about where you get the human blood. Doesn't need to be discussed. I know a guy. Email me. Anybody needs human blood in here, in the chat, anywhere? Email me. I know a guy. Anyway, The government is planning a major crackdown on left-wing groups, nonprofits, individuals. And also this is an effort to go after the money that might fund even liberal groups, because Trump and them, they conflate actual left-wing liberals. Part of that is because they don't fucking know what they're talking about. Part of it, the main part of it, is by design to make people think that liberals are radical left, when in fact they're basically, most of them are basically Republicans from the 1980s, is what a liberal is now. And Republicans of modern day are fascists from the 1930s and 40s, is what they are. But anyway, so they're going to go after groups like Code Pink, but Code Pink's a tiny, tiny fish compared to, they're already going after groups like Greenpeace, these large scale groups that defend things like the environment. We can't have that, right? We want to gut and destroy the environment as much as possible. Greenpeace is already large oil companies and energy, quote unquote, energy companies have already gone after Greenpeace, and they're appealing it, but the decision against them for their actions to protest the Dakota pipeline would cost them hundreds of millions of dollars, more than Greenpeace could ever pay. So essentially, if the appeals don't work, Greenpeace will be shut down. It will be bankrupt. So in that way, they've already succeeded in destroying groups like Greenpeace. And anyway, those are the type of groups they'll want to go after. Of course, then they're the ones that are not well funded, but are just kind of in their face, like groups that have big protests, even groups as small as Jewish Voice for Peace, a group that I'm a member of. I play no role in it, really. I just occasionally go to their events, but it's mainly Jewish people who are against genocide and against Israel's perpetration of a genocide, stand up for Palestine. And there's those type of groups that show up at protests. We got to crush them, right? Because, the fact that people show up and hold a sign once every 3 weeks is really just, you can't have that in America. No, it just fucks everything up. The officials say that cabinet secretaries and heads of federal agencies are being mobilized to identify what leaders describe as domestic terrorism. Yeah, all that domestic terrorism you've seen from the far left. My God, there's so much domestic terrorism perpetrated by the left. Like literally, it's people like planting community gardens. the domestic terrorism they're talking about. They also aim to declare left-wing activity tied to violence as a legal and security threat. Trump and J.D. Vance have publicly echoed the plan, appearing on what they called the Charlie Kirk Show Monday. Vance and Trump advisor Stephen Miller, both well-known and well-established, I'd say, sociopaths, because you got to work your way up in the sociopath community. There's a lot of them out there, and you really got to differentiate yourself amongst all the sociopaths. And I feel like J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller have done a good job of that. So you got to give them props on that. So many sociopaths here in our lovely country, and yet they've stood out. That's something. They should wear a sash or something. There should be a sash involved. Top sociopaths or something. Miller said, "With God as my witness, we are going to use every resource, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, eliminate, and destroy this network and make America safe again for the American people." The network he's referring to, I assume, is the Discord chat that Tyler Robinson was on that had 12 people that mainly play video games. They're trying to pretend that this is some giant left-wing movement, and the reason they're doing that is in order to crush free speech, in order to crush even people on the slightly more left-wing side of liberal. It's to get rid of those groups, the groups standing up against Israel, boycott, divest, and sanction. Of course, they're trying to pass bills it has not passed, but they're trying to pass bills where Marco Rubio could revoke your American citizenship, basically for saying things like free Palestine. Really horrific shit. And this is a serious ramping up. At least the efforts are, if they're allowed to continue, a serious ramping up of the crushing of free speech in this country, the crushing of any kind of activism, anybody willing to fight back against this absolute fascistic shit show. That's what it is. It's a shit show. Okay, it's a fascist. It's a fast shit show. Is what we got going here. And I'd call Trump Duscellini. All right, Benito Duscellini is my new name for Donald Trump. Here's Donald Trump. He's asked about code, or he's asked about something, and he brings up Code Pink. Code Pink were the ones, I played the video on the show the other day. Code Pinks were the ones that protested him at that steak restaurant, which was half a block from where I worked for 8 years. The high-end steak restaurant in downtown D.C., where Trump went to prove he had ended violent crime in D.C. He went to one of the most expensive steak restaurants in D.C., where all the violent crime was happening. Anyway, he's asked about Antifa and others.
And a woman, in many cases, women, you can see they're professional agitators. I had one the other night. I had 4.
Is there anything that Trump is other than a professional agitator? Like, is that not, that'd be at the top of his LinkedIn, wouldn't it?
Agitators. I had one the other night. I had 4 the other night, all in one group, total phonies. I started to scream when I got into a restaurant, oh, something with Palestine. And I said, well, I'm doing a great job for peace in the Middle East. I should get lots of awards for that, right? Are
you doing a great job for peace in the Middle East? Should you get awards for that, Donald Trump? You stand at the top of a tiny number of people that are committing this genocide that the latest UN report says, yes, it's a fucking genocide. And he's at he and Netanyahu standing at the top committing this genocide. So, yeah, it's just great stuff for peace in the Middle East.
With the Abraham Accords and everything else. But a woman just stood up and started screaming. And she got booed out of the place, too. There were a lot of people in the restaurant.
She didn't get booed out of the place. He literally signals to his security to get them out, to make them leave. So then the Secret Service, dragged the Code Pink protesters out.
There to show how safe, and it was safe. I mean, the woman is just a mouthpiece. All she was a paid agitator. And you have a lot of them.
Because clearly anyone who's upset with Donald Trump must be paid, right? No one's just legitimately infuriated by Duscellini here, right? It's got to be paid. It's the only people I've seen upset with Donald Trump. Someone's paying them. Absolutely.
And I've asked Pam to look into that in terms of RICO, bringing RICO cases against the criminal RICO.
Bringing criminal racketeering charges against people who yelled at him at a restaurant. That sounds legit, right? That sounds like a fair use of power, doesn't it? Criminal federal racketeering charges, usually used for the fucking mob. We're going to put that on Code Pink because a 4'2" lady in a pink shirt told me I'm a war criminal.
Because they should be put in jail. What they're doing to this country is really subversive. Yeah.
They should be put in jail. That's right. Isn't it also hilarious how the right wing acts like it's the left wing or liberals or whoever that are so easily offended. They can't take anything. They're so touchy. They're, as Lee Ford said in the comments, they're snowflakes. And yet Trump literally got 4 ladies, told him he's a war criminal for 30 seconds. And he wants to bring RICO charges and have them locked up in prison for it. Can you get more fucking snowflake than that? Holy shit. This is a lot worse than your average snowflake. This is a lot worse than your average Karen who wants to, have the HOA limit the number of flamingos that their neighbors allowed in the yard. She's got 6 flamingos. We had a clear policy of 4 flamingos allowed in the yard. That was the policy. And to me, that was the top of snowflakehood. But then you see Donald Trump and you go, wow. Just taking it to a whole new level. Here he is. He's asked about hate speech. And you can tell he, oh, Jesus, I already lost it. You can tell he just took it He takes it great, right? He just gives a fair and legitimate answer about hate speech. Hold on. There we go.
And what do you make of Pam Bondi saying she's going to go after hate speech? Is that, I mean, a lot of your allies say hate speech is free speech.
She'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe they'll come after ABC. Well, ABC paid me $16 million recently for a form of hate speech, right? Your company paid me $16 million for a form of hate speech. So maybe they'll have to go after you.
I think there's at least 36 different falsehoods in everything every sentence Trump says. No, it was not for hate speech. ABC didn't pay him for hate speech. ABC settled a lawsuit as a form of a bribe for our all-powerful Ducellini because ABC News doesn't want him to use the full power of the U.S. government to go after them. So they paid him a bribe, as did CBS paid him a bribe. Of course, CBS was then the reason they paid that bribe was to get him to allow the merger that has now put Larry Ellison, the richest man on the planet and the largest private funder of the IDF, at the head of CBS News. But so a lot of these networks are paying bribes to Donald Trump to get him to somewhat leave them alone. It doesn't mean he's going to fully leave them alone, but and of course these are fully legal bribes when done in this way, but it had nothing to do with hate speech. It had nothing to do with any of that. And you know, the question was, what do you make of Pam Bondi saying she's going to go after hate speech when a lot of people say hate speech is free speech? And yeah, this was always, you know, people say that liberals paved the path. Did I say paved? Jesus, paved. The tongue is swelling. Paved the path. Say paved the path 13 times real fast. Paved the path to fascism, to Ducellini. They have, because the whole, like, the pushing of the idea of hate speech, and initially it was used for, like, well, these people, you know, murdered a gay person, and we're gonna get them on the murder charges, but then we're also gonna get them for hate speech. And it's like, I think you got him for the I don't know that you need to cut away at parts of our freedom of speech in order to further go after these people who are murderers. Hate speech has always been incredibly difficult to define, and therefore it allows anybody to go after anything in order to cut back your freedom of speech. And if you're Donald Trump, then everything's hate speech, right? That ABC reporter asking him a question, that's hate speech. If Donald Trump were to watch this show, and I know he is a regular watcher, how you doing, Donald? He would call all of this hate speech. So it just giving these tools to the ruling elite to go after hate speech is a toolkit for fascism. And, you know, that's just one tiny example. But the larger point I was making here is they are using the death of Charlie Kirk to go after what they're calling the left, but really means a lot of liberals that are slightly more progressive. Yes, anyone who's left, but also anyone who doesn't identify as either party, but is critical of Donald Trump. That would be called the radical left. There is very little at all radical left in this country. They've been, you know, the radical left, meaning the actual far left, has been gutted, torn apart, infiltrated. I mean, you wouldn't believe the amount of infiltration that goes on in these groups. Like, take, for example, the protest at the Venezuelan embassy. You guys remember that from several years ago? Several people I look up to and consider friends started the occupation of the Venezuelan embassy when the government was under the first Donald Trump, but under Donald Trump, we're going to steal the embassy. And the Venezuelan government said that they could occupy it. So they went in there and they occupied it against the U.S. government. And it's technically Venezuelan land the embassy is supposed to be. So the U.S. government is not supposed to have any right to go in there or be in there. And anyway, there was a tiny number of protesters outside protesting for and against. There were right-wing, absolute awful human beings that would yell homophobic, transphobic, anti-women, racist slurs around the building. And so there was the right-wing protesters. And then there were some pro-Venezuela, pro-law. Like, you don't have to be pro-Venezuela to be, but it's just be pro-international law to defend the embassy. And it turned out that one of the main ones who was there regularly, because, at odd hours, there'd be like 5 people there. And this guy was always there, always real spirited, cheering for international law and Venezuela. And I don't know if everybody who talks for a living gets as angry as I do when they fuck up, but and it turned out he was an infiltrator for the police. We found that out later. Some people were suspicious. I didn't know until later, and there's not even that. Think about the number of people there. There's like at the peak times, there were 100 people outside that building, but at odd hours, there'd be 5, protesting for or against. And he was one of them. Like, that's how they'll infiltrate fucking everything. So anyway, that was a crazy tangent, but that was all just to say that they're using this to crush any remnants of the left, but also any criticism of Trump in general. But so I want to get to the shooter's actual, not the actual ideology of the shooter, because I don't think we know all that much. Ken Klebenstein had a good article about, we've seen very little ideology that has come forward about Robinson. Yes, we know he came from a Republican family. They've gone through his Discord, but that was with friends, but almost none of it's political. Ken Klebenstein said there was one reference to Trump and one reference to Biden over like years of this Discord chat. And it was not, the references were not strong. They were like, who's going to win the election? Oh, it looks like Trump's ahead. It was that kind of thing. And his only statements to friends, Robinson's, has been that he disliked how much hatred Charlie Kirk was putting into the world. So maybe more will come out, but the idea that this was some far left, movement that Robinson was involved, it's just utter horseshit, but they're using it. But then we get into the ideology of shooters in general, of shooters in this country. And this is from World Beyond War, which is David Swanson's effort. And you should check out that site if you ever get a chance. So David Swanson wrote this article. He said, the hunt for a political ideology driving each murder that makes the news obscures some key points. One is that we actually know, and I'm paraphrasing here, we actually know the number one aspect of every political shooter, every bit of political violence is done by one type of person, like 99.9% of the time. And that type of person, I think, should be locked up, like all of them. Like, we just look, there's too much political violence, we got to lock them all up, okay? And that type of person is men, okay? Men commit it all. And it's so funny to see Republicans be like, it's leftists have done it and they always do the bad things. And then you also have, liberals, Republicans do all the bad things. And it's like, well, actually it's legitimately all men. Like every last one of them is a man. But so you have that aspect of it. That, of course, never gets talked about. Swanson says the one is the shooter is always a man, even though women are equally capable of shooting, meaning that the ideology is one of masculinism. Another is that the shooter, more often than not, also shoots himself. This happens a fair degree and, large percentage, obviously not every time. It didn't happen with Trump's attempted assassination. It didn't happen with this one. But, and that the fact that the shooter shoots himself blows a rather large hole in the idea that he is working to advance some subgroup of people or some desired better world. because if you were doing that, you would be part of an ongoing effort, not a one and done situation. Another aspect, which David Swanson does not mention, but he's mentioned before in articles, is that the other top determinant of whether someone is going to be like an active shooter somewhere is whether they're former military. And I think that comes from the fact that they have the training. Some of it comes from the PTSD. Another comes from the fact that the amount of moral injury they've suffered is massive. And so they then start to view murdering and killing as okay, or something that needs to be done. It's really, it's disgusting what our military does to men and women, although men are the ones who end up becoming shooters. He continues, another is that to the extent that the coherent thoughts are involved, every shooter shares the masculinist ideology that holds that anything good can come of shooting people. And he means this, he goes on to make clear that he means this in terms of all the killing we do, in terms of the killing being done in Palestine, the idea in Gaza, the idea that good will come from murdering loads of people or from murdering anyone is an absolute unhinged sociopathic idea to begin with. Gathering additional information about the thinking of murderers is all to the good. Perhaps assassins of important people are very different from your typical suicide or murderer, but the ideology hunt is always fundamentally accomplished from the start. The shooter has, at the very least, the shooter ideology. It's an ideology as opposed to basic historical facts as climate denialism or trusting political candidates. The idea that a murder will make for a better world essentially is always a bad plan. I mean, even if this guy Robinson, even if it's true that his main goal was simply to end the hatred that Charlie Kirk had put forward, well, does it look like this has decreased hatred in America? Does it look like this has put us on a better path to a better world? This shit never does. It never does. It just furthers the death and killing, and sometimes even paves. Am I going to do it again? Paves the road to fascism. But interesting article over there by David Swanson. I hope you go check it out when you get a chance. On separate but still Trump related news, click thumbs up, everybody. Leave a comment. By the way, all your comments are are show up on the screen there. So for those of you not watching this live, I know, many hundreds of you watch it live, sometimes thousands, but many more thousands will watch this not live. But I hope you'll enjoy the comments scrolling on the screen and maybe join us live sometime and be able to throw your own comments in there. In a second, I'm going to remind you how to get a free month on my locals page and support this show. But anyway, let's get to Trump and how he is trying to take full control of the economy. Trump has asked the Supreme Court to give him total control over the U.S. economy. And it's about 3 separate cases that are going to be in front of the Supreme Court, or already are, in a trio of cases, 2 currently pending before the Supreme Court and 1 that is likely to land on the justice's doorstep as soon as Tuesday. Donald Trump claims new powers that, if he prevails, would give him near total control over all U.S. fiscal and monetary policy. Now, of course, this is horrific and maddening, but let's also add the caveat in here that our economy's been run by a tiny number of corporate sociopaths for decades now. So it's not like Trump is trying to take it away from the people. It's not like the people had a lot of say in this economy anytime recently, probably ever, but definitely not recently. The first is the ongoing litigation over Trump's tariffs. The court plans to hear 2 challenges to the tariffs, known as Trump v. VOS Selections and Learning Resources v. Trump, in November. At least 10 federal judges have concluded that Trump has exceeded his authority, which is a lovely way to say fucking did illegal shit he shouldn't. Thank you, Herney Hill, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. I do not frown upon super chats. You guys are the best. Thank you for supporting the show. And, oh man, I can't pronounce this. Ecclesiastes, is that how you pronounce it? Ecclesiastes has asked whether anyone else is going to my show on October 9th. I love that you're coming to it. Just to be clear, I am on the show. I am not the show. The show is Cornel West, Richard Wolf, Chris Hedges, and Laura Flanders. I am like a little sideshow. You know, the person who does the sign language, like when political people are speaking, and that like they're there, but they're not the show. That's me. That's me on that show, October 9th in New York City. Except I won't be doing any sign language because I don't know any. So it's really, that analogy was absolutely wrong. Zero sign language. Anyway, I'll give you more information in a minute about the October 9th show. But let's keep going on this topic for just a minute. 10 federal justices have said he exceeded his authority. The amount of money at stake here is massive. Trump's lawyers estimate the tariffs will reduce federal deficits by $4 trillion in the coming years. However, Trump's lawyers are liars. That's why he picked them. That's why he selected them. That was the job interview. I mean, all lawyers, I guess, are liars, but these are particularly awful liars. And anyway, Yale's budget lab has said it will decrease the deficit by $2.4 trillion that's over many years. That's until 2035, up through 2035. So he's trying to double the amount of money that the government will make from these tariffs. The second case is Department of State. And I'm not, because we've done so many shows on the tariffs and everything, I'm not getting into all the pages of caveats to Trump's tariffs, how they're going to be passed off on American people. They already are. How they're going to ruin any remaining, working with other countries to do a goddamn thing. How it is a waning U.S. empire that's collapsing and trying to just suck some money out of other countries. So many caveats, too many to list, but I've done other shows on that. The second case is Department of State versus AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition. Now, you may think by the name that is a fight over vaccines, but it is not. It is a fight over what federal money Trump is allowed to stop from going to where it should go, is basically what it is. It's currently pending on the court's shadow docket, which is a mix of emergency motions that the court decides without any explanation. AIDS vaccine, the case, involves impoundment, or a president's refusal to spend money that he's required to spend under a federal appropriations law. Basically, this stuff has already been agreed by the federal government to spend this money to send AIDS vaccines to, let's say Africa. I'm guessing it's Africa, but I don't know. And Trump does not want to send that money. He doesn't want to spend it, even though it's all been approved by Congress and everything else. It was signed by the last president. And so the idea that he wouldn't have to go through with something that's already been approved by all branches of government is a crazy level of power, which, of course, Trump is pushing the level of power he has in every area. And the article then says, until very recently, there was widespread consensus that impoundment is illegal, meaning you have to spend the money the way it was written by Congress. In 1969, Justice Department memo, future Chief Justice William Rehnquist wrote that it is, in our view, extremely difficult to formulate a constitutional theory to justify a refusal by the president to comply with a congressional directive to spend. Okay, so that's number two. And then the final case is Trump v. Cook, which is likely to reach Supreme Court Tuesday. Cook involves Trump's attempt to fire a member of the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors in violation of a federal statute, which only allows Fed governors to be fired for cause. Late on Monday, a federal appeals court denied Trump this power, although it did so over the dissent of a judge who previously worked in Trump's White House. The Fed wields tremendous power over the U.S. economy, including the power to temporarily stimulate the economy at the expense of much greater economic turmoil down the road. For this reason, Congress insulated the Fed's leaders from presidential control. So, although there's a million criticisms with the Fed, and many people believe the Fed should just be ended, it does seem like if you give the current president the power to just fire the Fed when they disagree with him, then what would he do? He'd do exactly what Trump's doing. You fire the ones that disagree, you put in the ones that agree, and then anytime the economy is having difficulty, you change the interest rates to help the economy. And that's the goal. That's what Trump wants to happen. So if all three of these cases are decided in Trump's favor by his favorable Supreme Court, then it will give him unprecedented control over the U.S. economy. But as I mentioned earlier, let's not forget that the U.S. economy has already been in the control of a tiny number of corporate Dussolinis, tiny number of corporate fascist assholes for many years now. So I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all, but let's just temper our excitement a little bit as to how much change this will create. Okay, I'm about to get to Israel and other topics. Please click thumbs up, click subscribe, but you got to just set this reminder in your calendar that I'm live 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you don't catch it live, I hope you'll watch it later. I hope you'll also check out my podcast. It's all at linktree.com/LeeCamp. But the most important thing is that I have a locals page. It's where what little fraction of funding for this show I'm able to cobble together. It's where it comes from. And I would love for you guys to join it for free. Support the show for free. You get a free month and then you can cancel. So you will never, if you cancel, you'll never have to pay anything. And you'll get locals for a free month. You'll get all the exclusive videos on locals for a free month. You'll also get my newer ebook, Dangerous Ideas, which I will send that to you. I will email that to you shortly after you join. You'll get all of that for free for a month. Of course, the ebook you get to keep forever. And it would be amazing if you could do that. And all you got to do is go to leecamp.net. And then when you get there, scroll down to become a supporter. And when you're going to check out, it might say $6 a month, but you put in promo code LeeCamp free, one word, all caps, and you'll get your free month. So that would be amazing. Really supports the show. And thank you all so much, those of you who have already done it. It really is the only way I'm able to keep doing this show. And like I said, the suppression somehow has ramped up over the past couple of weeks. Literally, our anemic numbers have cratered over the past 2 weeks because reasons from YouTube. No reasons whatsoever, really. The other thing, for those of you in New York, I will, as mentioned, I will be the moderator on a panel featuring Laura Flanders, Chris Hedges, Cornel West, and Richard Wolff. And it's at the Left Forum, another thing that I'm sure Trump will attack soon. Thank you, Ecclesiastes, for throwing in a super chat. Thank you for supporting the show. It's the title of the event is Big, Beautiful, Basic Change. Richard Wolff, Chris Hedges, Laura Flanders, and Cornel West. And I don't know, but to be honest, I don't know loads about it. I know it's October 9th at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. It's 6 to 8 p.m. in New York City. And, maybe I'll get a couple of jokes in there. Maybe I'll get to be funny for a few minutes. Who knows? But should be a fun and interesting night. Important group of people to get together. And I hope you will join us there. Oh, God, I forgot to give you the promo code to that. If you are going to the New York show, use promo code unredacted, all caps. Unredacted, all caps to It's like 20 or 25%. I'm also going to put the Eventbrite link into the comments here. Because it's also an Eventbrite. But yeah. And if you click the Eventbrite link, it'll take you straight to the promo code so that you already get the discount. Okay. Let's keep going. A UN commission of inquiry accuses Israel of genocide in Gaza and urges global action. I believe this is the first time a UN commission has called it a genocide. A team of independent experts commissioned by the UN Human Rights Council has concluded that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, issuing a report Tuesday that calls on the international community to end the genocide and take steps to punish those responsible for it. The deeply documented findings. Yeah, can you believe they were able to find a lot of evidence that it's a genocide? Isn't that crazy? I would have thought there'd be sparse evidence of a genocide. You telling me they had a lot of evidence? Well, that's crazy. The deeply documented findings by the three-member team are the latest accusations of genocide against Netanyahu's government as Israel carries on with its war in Gaza, which has killed tens of thousands of people. Israel rejected what it called a distorted and false report. Oh, who would have thought Israel disagrees? I wouldn't have thought that. After a painstaking legal analysis examining both actions and intent, the commission said Israel has committed 4 of the 5 genocidal acts as defined under an international convention adopted in 1948 known as the Genocide Convention, 3 years after the end of World War II and the Holocaust. The commission finds that Israel is responsible for the commission of genocide in Gaza. It is clear that there is an intent to destroy the Palestinians in Gaza through acts that meet the criteria set forth in the Genocide Convention. So, for any idiots you see out there, and I've done hard work debunking them, like Ben Shapiro and the Free Press and all of these garbage human beings, Sam Harris, Bill Maher, et cetera, Jordan Peterson. I've done a lot of hard work debunking the absolute shit that is vomited out. Yes, they vomit shit out of their face holes. And for any of them that want to keep saying that garbage, keep in mind Barry Weiss, who will soon run CBS News. Keep in mind the UN Commission now says it's genocide. So you're getting bigger and bigger and more important groups saying this is genocide. Here are, if you were wondering what the 5 acts, 5 criteria are, here they are. Keep in mind while listening to this, to the 5 acts of genocide, that all you have to do is be guilty of one of them. You do not have to be guilty of all 5. If you do one of these things, you are guilty of genocide. Just remember that. Just remember that as I go through the list. Killing members of a group. And you may go, well, that's ridiculous because Charlie Kirk was a member of a group. But no, it's killing members of that group simply because they are members of that group. Like you don't even know their name, but they're members of a group and you murder them. That's a genocidal act. Imposing measures aimed to prevent births in the group. Deliberately inflicting conditions calculated to bring about the physical destruction of the group. And finally, forcibly transferring its children to another group. Now, the only one that they claim there is not evidence of is the forcible transfer. But there is obviously very clear evidence of forcible transfer. I mean, they're telling people right now that they have to leave Gaza City, right? There's like 1 million people in Gaza City, and more on that in a moment. So that's forcible transfer. You're saying you have to leave or we're just going to murder everyone. But I think the reason they say there's not evidence of that last one is because it says forcible transfer of its children to another group, basically stealing children and putting them in another group, which, by the way, we did do to the Native Americans. So that is that is one of the many aspects of genocide that the Americans committed against Native Americans. And Canada did as well, stealing their children, putting them in special schools to basically rip their culture from them. But of course, the only reason Israel hasn't committed that fifth aspect is because they don't care to remove the children. They just want to obliterate everyone. So if you are so genocidal that you just want to kill everyone, you don't need to remove the children or transfer them somewhere. You just murder everyone. And that's what Israel is doing. So again, they only have to be guilty of one of these, and they're guilty of minimum 4 out of 5 of them. And here is Israel's response, or someone asks. So this is a member of that commission that just called it genocide being asked about Israel's response to the report. Let me go ahead and put it on the screen, because playing it without putting it on the screen and so you can't hear it would be kind of silly. It'd be kind of a waste of everybody's time, I feel like. Okay, here it is.
The Israeli Foreign Ministry today decried a distorted and false report and said that 3 individuals, so referring to the Commission of Inquiry, 3 individuals serving as Hamas proxies, notorious for their openly anti-Semitic positions. Could you please comment on that?
These reports should be taken seriously, but honestly, the Israeli responses are becoming so boring. You know, they say the same thing every time. They're producing the responses by ChatGPT these days, and they spend so much money in the Foreign Ministry on propaganda. You'd think that they would actually come up with something original. I would want them to engage with the evidence, but they never engage with the evidence. They put the report into ChatGPT, and then they put out the standard response. So no one takes it seriously, and Jamie, you shouldn't either.
I love how well he just refutes. He just says it's just getting boring. They put in a ChatGPT and they don't care. It's a great response. Here's a little more. Here's a little more of that same commission member. Let me try and make sure I'm showing you the right video.
The most significant aspect of the interim orders of 26 January 2024 was that every country in the world was put on notice by the International Court of Justice that there was a plausible risk of genocide in Gaza. And if it had not happened before that, it certainly happened then, that every country in the world became obliged under the law to take action, not to speak fine words, to take action to prevent genocide. There can be no doubt whatsoever that that obligation was activated on the 24th of January 2024, if not before. And in response to your question, that applies as much to India as Jamie, it applies to Germany and the United States, as it applies to my country and every other country.
Well said. Well said. They should have known at minimum 2024 that this was a genocide, and they then should take actions to stop it. Every country should have behaved that way. And of course, none have. And it would just, that would have been great, wouldn't it? If they had, that would have been great if they had just done that, like 2 years ago, worked to stop genocide. Of course, the U.S. is funding the genocide. U.K. is surveillance flights all the time to help the genocide. I also wanted to update you on some other aspects of it. Here is from Haaretz. Haaretz is, as you probably know, the kind of somewhat more left-wing newspaper in Israel, but when you are essentially supporting a genocide, how left-wing could you be? Like, feels like a left-wing pro-genocide newspaper is still not really left-wing. Some updates that they're giving about what's going on in Gaza. The Gaza Civil Defense Organization reported that more than 150,000 people have been displaced from Gaza City since last month, and that 70,000 people have lost their homes. The IDF said that approximately 350,000 people have evacuated Gaza City so far. Hamas Information Ministry put the number at 190,000, noting that around 800,000 people currently reside in the Mawasi area. 800,000 people are being sent to move and are being told to move, and if they don't, they'll just be murdered. It's unfathomable. Everything Israel's doing, of course, as they continue to do. Far-right minister Smotrich, you've probably heard of him. He's like, if there's something more far-right than Netanyahu, it's this guy. But there's not really. It doesn't really exist. But told a real estate conference that Gaza is becoming a real estate bonanza and that negotiations with the U.S. regarding a business plan for the Strip have begun. He said, quote, "We paid a lot of money for the war, so we need to decide how to divide the percentages of the land in Gaza." He added, "The demolition phase is always the first phase of urban renewal. We did that. Now we need to start building." God, could you have any more obvious evidence that Israel's enriching themselves from this, that Israel's stealing land from this, that Israel wants to clear everybody out, aka ethnic cleansing from this? I mean, they're trying their best to tell you this is all genocidal. They're trying really hard to tell you this is a genocide. This is ethnic cleansing. And yet, a lot of people still want to argue with Israel and say, no, you're not ethnic cleansing. You're doing fine, little fella. Here's an update on the flotilla that continues to head towards Israel. Towards Gaza. But of course, Israel will attack it at some point and already has bombed 2 of the boats. 16 nations warn Israel against attacking the Gaza-bound global Samud flotilla. The foreign ministers of 16 nations on Tuesday implored Israel to not attack the global Samud flotilla, a fleet of around 40 boats attempting to deliver desperately needed humanitarian aid to the embattled Gaza Strip, where Palestinians are suffering 22 months of U.S.-backed genocidal war and forced famine. The global flotilla has informed about its objective of delivering humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip and raising awareness about the urgent humanitarian needs of the Palestinian people and the need to stop the war in Gaza. The foreign ministers of Bangladesh, Brazil, Colombia, Indonesia, Ireland, Libya, Malaysia, Maldives, Mexico, Pakistan, Qatar, Oman, Slovenia, South Africa, Spain, and Turkey said in a joint statement that they should be protected. So, sorry, one second. So yeah, but I wish them a safe travels. Obviously, it should be. Obviously, we should be worried for them because who knows what Israel's plans are. They've already bombed 2 of the ships. They have murdered people on board back in, I think, 2012 when a similar flotilla of just one ship went towards Gaza. They have arrested people and locked them up in Israeli prisons and beaten them, such as Chris Smalls, who I had on this show not long ago, just a few days ago. I had Chris Smalls on for all y'all. And yeah, he was beaten by the IDF when they arrested him. So let's keep rooting for them. All right, I'll bring you one more story before I'm going to do extra segments for everybody at Locals. And again, you could get it for free. You could go sign up for free. And it supports this show. And even when you sign up for free, it supports this show. All you got to do is go to leecamp.net Click become a supporter. So when you're checking out, League Camp free, one word, all caps, to get a free month. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. But here's one more story before we wrap up. For those of you refusing to go over to locals, Jerry has quit Ben & Jerry's. And many of you know that Ben & Jerry's is, they're outspoken about what is wrong with America, what is wrong with this world. And they are outspoken about Palestine. They're outspoken about many things. And it's really more Ben that has done the speaking, even though they are both pretty politically active. But as you may or may not know, Ben & Jerry's was years ago sold to Unilever. However, as part of the deal with Unilever, it was agreed that Ben & Jerry would get to keep running Ben & Jerry's, and they'd get to keep doing their activism. So that was in the deal with Unilever, was you get to keep speaking out about what you care about. You get to keep running Ben & Jerry's. But Unilever would be the owner. However, Ben & Jerry's co-founder, Jerry Greenfield, is leaving the ice cream brand after 47 years, saying that the independence it once had to speak up to speak up on social issues has been stifled by the parent company, Unilever. In a letter that co-founder Ben Cohen posted on social media, for Greenfield's behalf, Greenfield said that he felt the independence the brand had to speak on social issues and events was lost to Unilever. And I don't know the details of it, but I know there's been an ongoing fight the past year or 2 years over Ben & Jerry speaking out about Palestine and Gaza, and Unilever not wanting them to do that. Anyway, here is Jerry's statement. He says, for more than 20 years under their ownership, Ben & Jerry's under their, meaning Unilever, Ben & Jerry's stood up and spoke out in support of peace, justice, and human rights, not as abstract concepts, but in relation to real events happening in our world. That independence existed in no small part because of the unique merger agreement Ben and I negotiated with Unilever, one that enshrined our social mission and values in the company's governance structure in perpetuity. It's profoundly disappointing to come to the conclusion that the independence, the very basis of our sale to Unilever, is gone. And I know or have known Ben & Jerry a little bit. I had both of them on Redacted Tonight twice. One time with both of them, and then at least a couple other times with Ben Cohen. And then I saw Ben Cohen again at his protest outside of the Justice Department. And that was over a year ago that I filmed him outside of the Justice Department and spoke to him there. Anyway, he does a lot of great stuff with Code Pink as well, who we referenced earlier, who Trump's now out to get. But yeah, Jerry leaving Ben & Jerry's. And I don't know what that means for Ben, because if Ben & Jerry's brand is being stopped from speaking out, well, Ben Cohen is actually the more outspoken of the two. So if Jerry can't stay there, I wouldn't at all be surprised if Ben Cohen also then leaves. Anyway, let's watch to find out. I'm sure they'll continue to be outspoken. They just might not continue to have anything to do with Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Which is how corporations work, right? You basically, you see someone who built something that's doing really well, and then you, as a more powerful, more moneyed interest, you come in and you buy that thing, and then you fucking wreck it, right? That's what you do. That's you get a bigger conglomerate to fund money, to fund the acquisition. I'm using all the buzzwords to fund the acquisitions of smaller things that you can then destroy. That's how corporate America works. Sometimes, like in the case of Ben & Jerry, the Unilever was actively or has actively been trying to sell the ice cream so they can make that money. In some cases, though, the money interest will buy something up just to gut it and sell the parts. That was what Mitt Romney, that's like how he made his money, right? It was Bain Capital. Bain Capital would buy up things. I remember some of the things that they bought up and gutted were like toy stores, like KB Toys. I remember them from when they were the only competitor to Toys R Us when I was growing up was KB Toys. Was it called KB? I think so. And then they bought it up, and not to save it, just to gut it and sell it for parts. And so they buy up our reality that's around us, and then they gobble it up, and then they shit it out, and they leave massive stacks of turrets just all over our landscape, and that becomes America. So I think I summed it up pretty well. I think that's pretty much it. Okay, now on to special extra segment for everybody at Locals. It will also be. I'm trying to get them posted at Patreon. Patreon's being a bitch about it, though. I'll be honest with you. But anyway, if you want to support the show or you want to get a free month, come over to leecamp.net, which will forward you to my Patreon page, and I'll see you there in just a minute. If you're really, really, really not into supporting me for free, then I'll see you later. All right, everybody at Locals, just hang in there, and I'll be with you in a moment. I just got to remove all the detritus.